Welcome everybody to the Goes to 11 Vise Squad. Today I'm going to show you how to tie my mini meat whistle fly. This is a variation of John Barr's meat whistle that I've downsized. So to start out in the vise, I have a size 6 90-degree jig hook and a size medium brass cone. Our thread today is 140 denier Woodduck from UTC. So we're going to start our thread about 3/4 of a cone back from the cone itself. So the reason we're doing this is we're using this as a reference point. So by stopping our thread here, we know that's as far as we want to put our next material. We don't want to crowd this head because it'll give us complications in the next stage. So from here we're gonna tie in our first material, which is some frostbite fish hunter braid. I got it at an online auction. This is a red color, but any braid will work. So on this fly, normally you would just tie it in at the front and work your way forward and backwards. On this one, I like to actually take the braid and tie it in right to the tail of the hook. The reason we're going to do this is we vary the Zonker strip tie in a little bit, which this helps us with. So we're just going to move our thread over to the bobbin cradle, and we're going to wrap this braid stop when you hit your thread marker. We're going to work about 3/4 the way back and then forward again just to build a little bit of taper. From here we're just going to capture this braid and trim out the excess. So normally the first thing you would have normally tied in was a copper rib to rib your rabbit zonker, but being that this is a smaller size, I find it unnecessary. It's actually more of a pain, and if your rabbit zonker fails, normally it breaks it right at the hook point where we pierce it here in a second. So that's why I'm not putting a rib on this fly. I just don't find it necessary. So my next material is some black barred rabbit strips. This is a gold variant. I'm going to create a tail just over a hook shank in length, and I'm going to pierce the leather right in the very center with the hook point. We're going to pull our hook out of the vise, seat that rabbit all the way on there, and then we're going to return it to our vise upside down. From here, we're just going to pull that rabbit nice and tight. We're going to part the fibers, and we're going to tie that in right on top of the hook. If your rabbit strip likes to fold a little bit, now's the time. Just push down on a little bit, and that'll help it lay nice and smooth on the top of the hook. Let's do one more wrap, pull downwards, really secure it in there. A couple more wraps just to play it safe, and then we're going to trim off our rabbit strip. And we're really going to bind this down. So now that we have our rabbit strip properly bound down, we're just going to remove it from the vise again and return the hook to a normal orientation. This is just going to help you keep that rabbit tail out of the way when you're tying in your next materials. So our next material is some Silli legs. I'm going to be using a amber color today. We're going to pull 2 strips off. We're going to find center, and we're just going to tie them in right on the side. 2 loose wraps. Center your legs exactly where you want them, and then just a couple more to really lock them into place. We're then going to grab the other 2 remaining Silli legs, and we're going to tie them in on the other side, making sure we got everything tied in really nice. From here, we're going to tie in our next material, which is some ginger strung Marabou. We're going to find 2 nice wispy feathers on the smaller side. Pull off the straggly feathers on the bottom just to clean it up a little bit. And we're going to tie this Marabou, just the tips in, and we're going to extend them to about the back of the hook. So we're going to tie 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom. So again, 2 loose wraps. Set your Marabou exactly where you want it. Pull tight. A couple really tight wraps. Trim out our excess. Nice and close. We're going to invert the fly. We're going to do the exact same thing on the top portion here. At this point, you want to make sure that you still have movement in your cone. Sometimes you can bind it at that angle a little bit, and then it's kind of a pain to get set exactly where you want it later on. So on this side, I'm going to use a slightly larger Marabou feather, not overly bigger, but slightly. I'm going to do the exact same process. A tail to about the hook bend. I'm going to set that right on top again. 2 loose wraps. Placed where you want it, pinch, pull tight. If it does move on you, now is the time to adjust it. You can always back off your thread and make sure it's perfect. So again, a couple nice tight wraps. Trim off our excess, nice and close. Our cone still goes in there nicely, which is good. And lastly, we're going to tie in some Flashabou. Here I got some copper Flashabou. We're going to grab 5-6 strands, something like that. And we are going to tie these in right on the center of the Flashabou. We're intentionally keeping this long to make our life easier when it comes to trimming them. This Flashabou can be a real pain, especially with the Conehead. So a couple wraps, we got it secured on our close side. We're just going to invert sideways. We're going to grab the tag end. We're going to pull it over to our far side, capture it down. There we go. From here we're just gonna secure everything really nicely and throw in a couple whip finishes. I'll take some Solarez Bonedry. We'll add just a little bit right on the top of them thread wraps. Hit that with our UV light. Alright. So our next step is we're going to gather all this Flashabou and the legs. We're going to pull them all downwards. You don't want to stretch the rubber legs. We're just putting a slight bit of tension on it just to get everything into the line. We're going to trim this about halfway down the tail. So we're going to just pull them all together, straight down, and trim. Next, we're just going to take our cone, give it a nice push rearward, and we're going to start our thread right in front of this cone again. And we're just going to be building a thread dam here to stop this cone head from flopping around on us. So the reason I tied this fly is I wanted a fly that I could fish on an indicator line and trail a nymph in very skinny water. And I was thinking a jig hook would really work well. So that's how I came up with this micro meat whistle. So you want to basically take your thread until the eyelet of the cone is completely covered so that it can't move forward up to the bend of the eyelet. Just like so. From here we're just going to add a little bit more of this Solarez Bonedry, and we're actually going to put some on the intersection of the thread and the cone. It's going to bind the cone to the thread, thread to the hook, and it's going to stop all this from moving around on us. And there you have it. The micro meat whistle. Simple little streamer pattern. Fishes well, hook point up. Stops a lot of snagging. Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed today's pattern. If so, please give this video a like. Also, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to click the reminder bell beside it so you don't miss any future content. Thanks again, and until next time, tight lines.